Well, in addition to reports of obstructionism in the Senate, we are also learning tonight that the Democratic National Committee is building a, quote, war room filled with former staffers from Hillary Clinton's failed presidential campaign to challenge the new administration every step of the way. Joining me now, Newt Gingrich, a former Republican Speaker of the House and a close advisor to President-elect Donald Trump, and the author of the book, Treason. Great to see you, Mr. Speaker. So, you know...
You say that differently every time I'm on. It's amazing how many variations you have.
I want to read it. All right, so this is, I mean, what about the lecture we got when Barack Obama took office that we're supposed to root for our president and work together, and the shock and awe that was expressed when Mitch McConnell was saying, you know, their top goal was to defeat his agenda, and they, you know, what are you talking about? It's America. It's a different message now.
Well, look, I think the Democrats are in a state of shock. I'm old enough that I couldn't help but think of Charlie Halleck, who used to be the Republican House Minority Leader when John F. Kennedy was president and Lyndon Johnson was president. And Halleck sounded a lot like Schumer, although he was from Indiana, so the accent was different. But this no, 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 stop, 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 obstruct, obstruct, nothing shrinks your party faster than learning the word no. All of your allies love it. They all come and give you money at the fundraiser. They all applaud. But the rest of the country looks at you like you're nuts. You know, a couple of things were mentioned, I think, by either you or Greg, that are really amazing. If you think about it, by Starwell, rather, if you think about it, taking on Tillerson, who had the largest manufacturing company of its kind, but number 6 in the world of all companies, ExxonMobil, deals in 80 countries or so, stunningly successful, Eagle Scout, etc. Why would you want to pick a fight with him? I mean, I understand picking a fight with the Attorney General of Oklahoma. You almost have to for the Sierra Club. But I think the Democrats are just floundering right now. They know that they have to appear to their base to be saying no, but that is going to drive moderate and middle-class America away from them at a very rapid pace.
Now, what about you? You reportedly, when you were Speaker, you know, liked this kind of thing too. And there's a 2012 book by Draper, "Do Not Ask What Good We Do," that suggested that that years ago you sat down and said, "This is let me see." This is a strategy to take back the House back in 2010, so you weren't Speaker, and the Senate in 2012, and you said at the end of a meal, you will remember this day, you'll remember this day as the seeds of 2012 were sown, and that you know, like most Republicans, wanted obstructionism when there was a Democrat in the White House.
Well, what I said was, if Barack Obama governed based on his inaugural address and on his speech at Grant Park and on his speech the Saturday before the election, that he was so moderate, he was so much in the center of the country. If he governed like that, he'd be Eisenhower. He'd split the Republican Party, he'd be reelected, he would grow the Democratic Party, and we couldn't do anything about it. But if he went to the left, if he followed Pelosi and Reid and did exactly what they did do, he would set up a moment for real polarization. And that's what they decided to do. And that set the stage for 2010 and beyond. And my advice to Trump is to learn a really deep lesson from that. I mean, he has a chance to reach out to Democrats, and one of the things that Starwell mentioned that's very real is the notion of a bill for infrastructure. He should be able to get at least a third of the Democrats to decide that they want an infrastructure bill.
But what about this cabinet? Like President-elect Donald Trump definitely has some agenda items that are, you know, in the middle ideologically that should be appealing to some of these Democrats. But the cabinet picks are clearly conservative, which is his right. Sure. He won. But they seem to be really digging in. And do you think that somebody like, some have also said, you know, Mnuchin, they're going to dig in on because he was behind, his group was behind a lot of these foreclosures on these, you know, these mortgage-backed securities. And do you think Scott Pruitt, who we just discussed for EPA, I mean, they're really going after Pruitt. Do you think they'll stop these guys from getting through? And how much capital does that expend when the Supreme Court justice fights come up?
Look, well, I think, first of all, the Democrats are going to be under enormous pressure. There's a spring session of the court. We already know that Trump is going to name one of the people on his list that he released months and months ago. They're all solid conservatives, but they're all widely respected jurists. I mean, nobody has suggested any of these aren't valid as Supreme Court nominees. So they'll bring that out very early, and the clock will start running, and the country's going to watch the Democrats twist themselves into pretzels. But let's take your deeper point. And I do think some of these guys have got to sort of earn their approval by doing really well in hearings and going to see senators and doing all the things you do in this process. But remember, he's not a normal Republican versus Democrat, right versus left guy. The example I tweeted about today is, jobs in Michigan by the Ford Motor Company, which is now going to invest $700 million in Michigan instead of Mexico. And the president of Ford said, look, we're doing this because we believe in the regulatory and tax reform that President-elect Trump is talking about. Now, what I tweeted today is, so how many Democrats in Michigan care enough about Michigan jobs to vote for the reforms that Ford says are essential to keep those jobs in Michigan? And that's going to pose, this is going to be very different than anybody expects. This will not be a normal right versus left presidency. This will be a very innovative, very pragmatic presidency.
Happy New Year, Mr. Speaker. Good to see you.
Happy New Year.
Joining me now with more, Executive Committee member of the Presidential Transition Team, Anthony Scaramucci, and Fox News contributor and Democratic analyst Julie Roginski. Good to see you both.
Great to see you.
Thanks.
So what's the problem? You know, Trump's defenders, President-elect Trump's defenders will say, so he's using the power of his office to try to obtain results for the American people.
Well, they're right that he is using the power of his office. I remember back in the day, Anthony, you might remember this too, when Republicans didn't like to pick winners and losers. They like to have the market play.
Are you talking about Solyndra?
I'm talking about, exactly. You guys complain about Solyndra quite a bit, and I'm happy to see that you're following suit by picking winners and losers through Twitter. Look, if he's able to accomplish this,
that's not what he's doing.
If he's actually able to accomplish this through regulatory reform and broad-based reform, that's one thing. If he's picking companies, naming them by name, where he's saying, if you do X, I will do Y, as he did for Carrier, for example, where Carrier got a few $1 million to save a couple of hundred jobs, 800 jobs, that they will now use the money to automate most of those jobs anyway, but that's something the president-elect doesn't want to talk about. That's different. That's picking winners and losers, and that's something that I think people, Republicans at least, who love the free market, don't necessarily support or have it until they got into the cult of Trump.
So Julie's a tough verbal adversary, but what she's missing about the president-elect, he's become the blue-collar advocate-in-chief among so many other things that he's doing right now.
But how is that different from being the green advocate-in-chief that Barack Obama was?
It's very different because in the case of General Motors or Ford, they're existing companies. They have an existing capital allocation structure, and they're making a decision whether to produce here in the United States or produce off the shore of the United States. In Solyndra, it was a speculative deal where the President Obama was making a decision about the environment. In this case, the focus is on American workers, Megyn, and rising middle-class wages and working-class wages. And so it's a very, very big difference.
So it's the priorities you have an issue with. It's not the philosophy, it's the priorities.
It's actually not just the priorities. What the Democrats also understand, which we both understand, is that we've got to get the middle-class people rising wages. We've got to get the working class, which are turning into the working poor in the United States, into the aspirational zone like my parents
What about that?
were.
What about the argument, Julie, that all he needs to do is pick a couple of these, right?
Yep.
And, like, threaten. And that, you know, the belief by some that the other companies who are thinking about moving their plants to Mexico will then be shamed out of doing it. They know he's going to come after them. They don't want that. And they're going to say, you know what, is it really worth it?
You know, I'm old enough to remember 2008. Barack Obama was riding high when he was coming into office. Everybody thought, it was a kumbaya moment. And then reality hits. And what ends up happening is these companies are going along now because he's not yet president. They're not sure what he's going to do. The minute his numbers start to tank a little bit, and inevitably, you know they will, because nothing's going to last forever, they're going to do what's best for their bottom line. And at the end of the day, what's going to end up happening is that they're going to make business decisions based on partially the regulatory environment, partially the tax environment, but also partially what's best for their bottom line.
Well, I mean, if he really puts a 35% tariff on...
He's not going to do that.
He's not? Because he has said that.
Well, I think that's a bargaining chip on the table to get the understanding among whether it's Mexico, other countries like China.
Because you know if he puts a 35% tax on those products coming across the Mexican border in the United States,
I understand that. Well, what the
American people are going to have to pay.
Yep.
They pay that price.
But Megyn, what the American people have to know, since 1945, we made, State Department and Treasury, a concerted effort to uneven the trade deals. Goods and services flow freely into the United States. our goods and services are embargoed into other countries.
That is a fact.
Okay, Megyn, we did that to create economic interdependence. It was a bipartisan thing, both Democrats and Republicans. All Mr. Trump is now saying is time out. It's had the deleterious side effect of hurting working-class families.
Deletery. Look at you.
Like that. That was a good
Delete
SAT
with
word.
O-R-Y at the end.
ACTs for the young people out there.
Yeah,
SAT for the old
word.
people. But can I tell you
What are you looking at me for? What's the pointing at me for and the old people?
No. I was pointing at that camera.
What was that?
I was pointing at that cameraman on stage 13.
Don't be mean at
Had
James.
nothing to do with you.
I'm not trashing poor James. The
Sorry, brother.
But your point is he's like, enough is enough. It's done the good it needed to do. Let's even the playing field.
And let's even the playing field. Because let me tell you something. The last best hope for globalism is Donald J. Trump. I'm going to tell you why. You create a burgeoning market for the middle class and the working class families. We're 23.6% of the GDP of the world. And we will see a increase.
It's similar to what he's doing with China.
Demand.
I mean, this is not that far afield from what he's doing with China, where he also sees an imbalance.
He loves the China. Great.
I
can't wait to pay more for my iPod. Thank you.
Great to see you.
Julie's worried. She's worried.
I'm not worried. I hope you're right.